morning. In one of our earlier videos, we did a bit of a walkthrough before we'd moved on to the boat, or I think we was just about to move on. And in that, we mentioned the fire. And we said we'd see how we get on with it. And one of the main reasons for that was when we was looking for a boat, I wanted a multi-fuel stove. And when we first saw the pictures of Lady Brian, we thought that this was a multi-fuel stove. And if you look at it, it looks like a multi-fuel stove. And that's partly because it is a multi-fuel stove. Or it was a multi-fuel stove. It's a Morso Squirrel. But what gives it away is the fact that the top and the bottom vents have been blocked off. And we've got this unit on the side. And this is a conversion from Lockgate that was installed on this, which has converted it to diesel. So we've got the looks of a multi-fuel stove, but with the benefit of it being diesel. Or is it a benefit? That's what I'm here to talk to you about. We moved on Lady Brian in November, and we've now done our first winter. So we thought we'd share with you what our thoughts are on this stove and our heating system, because as you'll find out, they're kind of one and the same thing, and how we've got on with it and how much it's actually cost us. So let's get into what the pros and cons are of our system, and that's what I'm emphasising. This is our system. It's my opinion and for our system. So different fires, different people will have their own opinions. So we'll start with the cons, the disadvantages of this stove for us. This has got a back boiler to it, and that back boiler powers our radiators. Now what that means is that, unfortunately, if we have the fire on, we have the radiators on. We can't have the stove without the radiators. We can't have the radiators without the stove. That's just how it is. We don't have a Webasto system on or something similar, so we can't put the radiators on separately to the stove, and like I said, we can't just have the stove on. With that, we have to have a pump that circulates the water from the boiler and pumps that around the boat into the radiators. So there is just a slight whirring noise of the pump, which when we first moved on was alarm bells. You know, it was like church bells ringing, but eventually over time you just don't hear it anymore, and it kind of disappears. So that's the first one. The second disadvantage is that we can only burn diesel. Obviously it's a diesel stove, but with a multi-fuel stove we can burn paper, wood, coal. You can do anything in that. You can get stuff by foraging and keep your bills down. We can't. We can only burn diesel. So that we lose the ability to forage for wood and have our bills made cheaper through that. People always ask us, does it smell of diesel? And the answer to that question is 99% of the time, no, it doesn't. You can't smell anything at all. But there is that 1% of time that you do get a smell of diesel. Now, we haven't had a wood-fired stove, but I believe that it does happen with the multi-fuel stoves, and you can get that smell of smoke. And that's basically when we're in strong wind and the wind blows down the chimney and we get a smell of diesel. It lasts for about a minute and then it goes away. If the fire wasn't set right and it was over dieseling and putting too much diesel in than where it could burn off, then it would smell of diesel. But if it's set right, there is no smell, except for that maybe 1% of time. I think since we've had the fire going and since we've had the boat from living on it in November, I think it's happened once, maybe twice. So it's not a major issue, and like I say, I believe that even with a multi-fuel stove you can get that smell of smoke, so I think it doesn't really matter whether it was diesel or wood fire. The other disadvantage for me was I wanted that romantic feeling of seeing the coals glowing in the fire, listening to the popping and crackling of wood on a cosy winter's evening, and you don't get that to some extent with this. Obviously you don't hear the wood crackling because we can't burn wood, but you do get to see a flame inside, which is still quite nice. It's not the glowing coals, but what I have found is that I don't spend all my evenings stirring at the fire. So you don't actually notice, as long as it's on and it's keeping me warm, I don't really stir at it. And when I do, it's quite pleasant to see what I see. So I've learned to live with it, but I don't have that wood burning, crackling noise or the lovely glow of red hot coals. Right, so that's what I can think of being the disadvantages. So let's take a look at what I think are the advantages of our diesel stove. One big advantage of this is it's very clean. We're not burning wood, we're not burning coal, therefore we're not generating any ash. So this at the bottom, as you've seen, doesn't have an ashtray in it, it doesn't have an ash pan, we don't have to empty the ash out, and therefore there's no dust. So it's a very clean burning system. The boat is cleaner because we don't have the ash. So for me, that's a big advantage. Because it's not burning any wood and coal and burning a lot of yellow flame, we're not sooting up the fire, and the chimney isn't getting sooted up, so we don't have to clean out the inside of the fire and clean the flue out anywhere near as much as you would with a multi-fuel stove. And I suppose that would make for a safer fire. We're not going to have chimney fires, and we're not going to have anything else. So for me, those are big advantages. Another big advantage is that, kind of contradicting the fact of the disadvantages that it only burns diesel, the advantage is that it only burns diesel. So with that, what I mean is our diesel supply comes off our main tank. We don't have a day tank, and that does have some advantages and disadvantages with it in itself, in that luckily ours is actually set that the supply for the fire comes out higher in the tank than the supply for the engine. Therefore, if we was sat stationary with the fire burning all the time, we wouldn't get to a point where we've drained the diesel tank and we're unable to start the engine. The fire will stop working before we run out of fuel to be able to start the engine. But because we're taking it off the main tank, we have a lot of fuel available for us. And we can light this fire, which is very simple to do. And we could light that on the 1st of the month, and on the last day of the month, the fire would still be lit. It's burning all the time. And this fire, all diesel fires, will burn 24/7. 365 days a year. As long as you've got the supply of diesel in there, you turn it on and you can practically leave it alone with no maintenance of it at all. We're not altering any vents to alter the airflow. We don't have to keep stocking it up with coal. And that brings me on to another advantage. On those cold, wet winter mornings where you've woke up in the night because it's cold, because you didn't get it set quite right, or you didn't stoke it up enough before you went to bed, and the fire's gone out and you've run out of coal, and now you've got to go outside in the cold, in the wet, to get some more coal. We don't have any of that. We turn it on and we leave it. If we want to turn it up, we turn the dial on top. That feeds more diesel into the fire and increases the heat. But as long as there's diesel in the tank, this fire looks after itself. The advantage, again, this is a contradiction for one of the disadvantages in the fact that this powers our radiator system. Lady Brian is a 70-foot narrowboat, and as you can see, the kitchen behind me, we are right at one end of the boat, and this fire isn't capable of heating the whole boat. It's a very long boat, and you do notice a temperature drop down the far end in the bedroom. So the fact that we are powering our radiators when the fire's on means that the whole boat is lovely and warm all the way through, all the time, and I'm not burning two systems in order to do that. If this was just a system that heated from here without the radiators, I would have to have the radiators on as well as this, and I'll come back to that when we look at the costings. So, as a bit of a summary, we've probably got as many disadvantages as we have advantages. Would I change this? No. If I had a multi-fuel stove, would I change to diesel? No, probably not. And the reason I wouldn't is just because of the cost of converting over to a diesel stove. If there was something wrong with this stove and this stove broke and I needed to replace it, yes, I would definitely go to a diesel stove. For me, there may be as many advantages as disadvantages, but the advantages of this diesel stove, for me, in my opinion, outweigh the disadvantages. So, do I love it after living with it for our first winter? Yeah, best thing since sliced bread. It's fantastic. So let's have a look at our costings and see how much it's cost. Right, so we've got some costings. You'll have to bear with me because I've got them all wrote down here in front of me because I wouldn't remember them. So, referring to these. The advantage we've had is that when we got Lady Brown and we moved on to it, it was in a marina, and we kept it in a marina for a while, and for a few of the months that we was in the marina, we was in lockdown, so we haven't took the boat out of the marina and we haven't been cruising. We was connected to shore power, which meant that we didn't have to run the engine to get hot water because we could use the 240 volt immersion heater. Therefore, all the diesel we used was purely for the stove. So the figures I've got are exactly for the stove. It's exactly how much fuel we have used for the stove. And what this equates to is we was using 50 litres of diesel a fortnight. So 100 litres of diesel per month, or 4 weekly. Now at the time we was paying 80p per litre. So simple, we was paying £80 a month to have the stove on. Now, bearing in mind that that is running the stove 24/7. That was day and night, every hour, every day for the month, £80. Now, we haven't had a multi-fuel stove, as I've said, but I have spoke to people that's had them, and I've kind of got some general idea of costings and the usage of coal. And I've been told that they're using 2 to 2.5 bags of coal per week. So I'm looking at that being 2 bags of coal a week at about £10 a bag. So you're looking at £20 a week over your 4 weeks. It's £80 in coal. It's exactly the same. But with the coal, you then have your fire lighters and you have maybe some kindling on top of that as well. So it could be slightly more expensive, especially if you was using 2.5 bags of coal a week. That would be more expensive. Also, if the price of diesel was higher, that would have put us up, but we could have got our diesel cheaper. We just weren't allowed to travel, so we had to get it from the marina, and that's what we was paying. But we could have had that cheaper. One thing to also take into account is that if you just have a multi-fuel stove, but you also have a Webasto system and you run your radiators, you've got to take into account the fact that you are burning diesel in your Webasto system to have your radiators coming on and off. So if you take into account how much diesel you're burning into that and add that into the equation, that again is probably going to make that more expensive than this, because that £80 would have been, because of the back boiler, would have been powering all our radiators as well as the fire through the boat through winter. So from our personal experience, this has been cheaper to run than a multi-fuel stove. But that's not to say that that's the case for everybody. And it would be great if anybody watching this who's got multi-fuel stoves or diesel stoves, if you've got your own costings, you know exactly how much you're paying, it'd be great if you popped them down in the comments box below, and then we've got a comparison to see roughly where we are. So if you've got time, just jot that down, and that'd really help us out. Right, so in summary, it's cost us for November, December, January, February and March, where it has been cold, it's cost us about £400 to heat the boat, and that has been heating the boat day and night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we've had very little maintenance, no cleaning it out, no lugging coal, no having to store bags of wood, bags of coal, no dust, no nothing. For me, that was £400 very, very well spent, and I haven't been cold at all. So that's probably it that I can recall. There's probably questions that you've got that I may not have answered, things you want to ask. If so, drop them down in the comments box down below and we'll answer them if we can. If you haven't subscribed, please think about subscribing. It's free to do. It really does help us out. And I just want to say at this point a really, really big thank you to everybody that's subscribed to us up to now. Your support is absolutely fantastic, and we really, really do appreciate it, and we love every single one of you. Obviously, we're out and about trading now. If you want to find out where we are, come and say hi, come and have a chat with us. Go onto our website at www.cruisingcrafts.co.uk, and on the homepage it'll tell you where we're going to be every weekend, and if we're in your area, come and say hello. Give us the thumbs up if you've liked this video. Give us the thumbs down if you haven't. As someone said, if you don't like it, click the thumbs down button twice. It works better that way. Any comments, like I said, leave below. And thanks for watching.